Hello and welcome to this is the last lecture in this part on the introduction to state space representations, and here we will talk about a few other things. We already had discussed about the realizations in the phase variable form, the rectangular form, and we also have seen the diagonal form. And uh, we have come across a few conceptual ideas while we were seeing these various representations, the most important being that the same transfer function is able to generate different state space realizations which look absolutely different from each other. So this happens because the way we define the states, so there is a flexibility which is in one way it is good because we can represent it in a manner which suits us for certain purpose. However, it may also be confusing at the beginning because we have previous idea is that a particular system has a particular transfer function, or at least a particular process is having a particular transfer function to represent that process. Now we are having so many different types of state space realizations, so it might confuse us a bit, but as we keep on looking at it, and as we stay with the subject, this is not going to be a problem. And we have come to realize that okay, we have to live with it. So, however, we also need to understand that since there are so many realizations which are possible for any particular transfer function or a particular physical system also, so there must be a definite relationship between these realizations, between these state space realizations. So that is one thing we would explore in this particular lecture, how they are actually related. Another thing is that we have derived the state space realizations from transfer functions. However, we have not yet have a formal method of deriving the transfer function from the state space realization. Yeah, sure, that the realizations that we had seen, which are the phase variable and the rectangular form and the diagonal form, if we have those state space realizations, by simply looking at them can know we can know which are the a coefficients, which are the coefficients of the denominator polynomial, and which are the coefficients of the numerator polynomial, which are the b coefficients. So by simply looking at the state space representation, we will be able to identify those coefficients of the uh, denominator and the numerator polynomials, and the transfer function could be directly written down. However, this is only so for those particular state space realizations that we had discussed. It might not there might not be such a direct way of obtaining the coefficients of these polynomials from the state space realization when we look at any other general state space realization. So if you have a general state space realization, then what would be the transfer function for that state space realization, or is there a method in which we would be able to compute the transfer function given any state space realization? So that is what we will explore, and that would take up the first part of this particular lecture. So here we see that how we what is the relationship between the state space matrices A, B, C, D and the transfer function GS. So let us see. So here you can very easily see that. Let me bring out the pointer. Yeah, so okay, sorry. Okay, no problem. So here what you see is that we start from the state space realization, which is in the general form A, B, C, D. A can be anything, B can be anything, C can be anything, D can be anything. They don't need to be in those particular structure as in the phase variable or in the rectangular form. So they can be anything. So what do I mean by anything is that the elements of A can be any can have any values, and all those elements could have some non-zero value. Some of them can be 0, some of them can be 1, some of them can be something else. So it is entirely very generic. So it is simply, so since it is generic, we are only talking about A, B, C and D in symbols, and not there's not any particular A, B, C and D. So this will hold true for all state space relations. What we do, we simply take the transfer function. We simply take the Laplace transform considering zero initial conditions. So since Laplace transform, we know that we have to consider zero initial conditions. We take the Laplace transform of this particular equation, the first equation, the dynamics. So the left hand side is Sxs, right hand side becomes Axs plus Bus, and simply we collect Xs, and Xs becomes Si minus A inverse Bus. Now y is simply Cx plus du, Cx plus dus, which is Csi minus A inverse Bus plus dus. That means ys by us, if you do, which is the transfer function gs, is simply Csi minus A inverse B plus D. That's all. This is very simple derivation, and you are expected to remember this throughout your life as control engineers, even as electrical engineers. So this is a very simple relationship, and you can very easily derive it also, and you can also remember it. So C Si minus A inverse B plus D. So this is also sometimes used as a very fundamental question when we ascertain the quality of our PhD candidates. So if we see that the person is not able to answer this, then we are not at all impressed by that person who is applying for the candidature. So this is a very basic thing, so you must all remember this. One thing, just a comment, that D does not contribute to the system dynamics. So you can see, yeah, so D does not contribute to the system dynamics. We all know this, and it's mostly zero since input is not directly fed to the output. So this comment we are mentioning all the while, all through, and again I have mentioned it here. So let's move to the next slide. So yeah, so the question now is, if we are given some A, B, C and D, how we are going to compute? So this is an expression, that is fine, but now how we are going to compute? So first thing is that we have to compute this Si minus A inverse. So that will take up the whole lot of our effort, and once we know this, then it is simply pre-multiplying with C, post-multiplying with B, and adding this D. So the effort goes here in finding this Si minus A inverse, and if it is a very like two-dimensional matrix 2 cross 2, then it is very easy. However, if it is 3 cross 3, it becomes a bit tough, and you can understand if it is 4 cross 4, your life is basically, I'm so whoever has given you that starts playing with your life. So um, but but there is a algorithm that has been developed by Leveris. So Leveris has proposed an algorithm which easily computes Si minus A inverse directly. So what is Si minus A inverse? It is basically the adjoint of Si minus A and divided by the determinant of Si minus A. You can go in this path, finding the adjoint and the determinant separately, and then finding this particular expression. You can go in that direction. However, there is an algorithm with these particular steps which one can follow. And how to understand this? So we expand this expression. So what is this expression? This is basically Si minus A, which is the characteristic polynomial, basically is like this. So it is simply a nth order polynomial. And what is the term in the numerator? The term in the numerator is strictly proper, so it is having the highest degree as Sn minus 1, and we can suppose that Sn minus 1 is having a matrix coefficient Pn minus 1. So see, this adjoint is a matrix, it is not a simple single polynomial, it is a matrix of polynomials. So we can suppose that this is basically a matrix coefficient where Pn minus 1 is a constant, with Sn minus 1 being the degree of S associated with it, plus Pn minus 2 Sn minus 2, likewise till P1S and a P0. So all these matrices Pn minus 1 to P1 to P0 needs to be found out, and these coefficients a coefficients also need to be found out. So that is what is given by the Leveris algorithm. So the steps include, there is an initiation. The step include this initiation. So Pn minus 1 is considered to be the identity matrix. You will understand that normally my the polynomial here can be considered to have the Sn minus 1 term to be 1, because we can always divide with it the entire the entire expression we can divide with it. And since we are dealing with matrix, we can consider this to be identity. So we consider this to be identity. And what is an minus 1? An minus 1 is basically minus trace of a. So this is where the formulas come in, and one needs to remember this. What is the next step? The next step is to compute Pi, which is Pi plus 1a plus ai plus 1I. So Pn minus 1 is already computed. So what you compute is basically Pn minus 2 here, using Pn minus 1 information, which is I here, then a plus an minus 1, which is minus trace of a into I, and something you will get which is Pn minus 2, and you use that to find an minus 2. So an minus 2 will be minus 1 by n minus 2, which is 2, and trace of Pn minus 2 a, and in this way we would proceed. So next we will find out Pn minus 3, and that will use here Pn minus 2a plus an minus 2I, Pn minus 2 and an minus 2 already computed in the previous step. So in this way we will go, and we will go till I equals to 0. So we will be able to find out P0 and A0 also. Finally we will check. So whatever P0 and A0 we have found out should result in this expression P0A plus A0I equals to 0. This is used for checking the computation. So there must be a theory behind this algorithm, but we are not going into that theory. I have also not checked it out. So you can simply use this algorithm to find out the expression of Si minus A inverse. And now we will also look at one example so that we get familiar with this, with how to work with this algorithm. Okay, so let us go to a white screen. Okay, something is wrong here. Okay. Yeah. So let us write the formulas down once for our own convenience, and uh, so we have to assume first Pn minus 1 equals to I, and An minus 1 should be equals to minus of trace of A. Then any Pi must be equals to Pi plus 1 A plus AI plus 1 I. Correct? Then AI would be equals to minus 1 by n minus I trace of Pi, trace of Pi A. This Pi you have already calculated here. And finally we would check that P0 A plus A0 I must be equals to 0. Yeah. So let us see the problem. So let us define the ABC matrices that we have in this problem. A is minus 2, 0, 1, 1 minus 2, 0, 1 minus 1, sorry, 1, 1 and minus 1. B is B actually we don't need for calculation of Si minus A inverse. We would calculate the transfer function, that's why we need BC. D we have considered as 0 in this case. C is 2, 1 minus 1. D we have considered to be 0. So let us start. So I will do the answer with blue ink. So let us see. So we have first thing to note that we have n equals to 3 here. So we start from, if we have n equals to 3, what we start from? We start from p n minus 1, which is p2. So we start from p2. So p2 we will assign as I. I is of the order 2. So I am not writing the 2. So I is basically a second order identity matrix. P2 is I. Then what is A2? So next we have to find out A2. So let us do this here only. A2. A2, what will be A2? A2 is minus trace of A. What is trace? So I hope you know what is trace. Trace is the sum of the diagonal elements. So in any matrix, we can always find out the trace of the matrix. It is the sum of the diagonal elements. So that diagonal elements here are these minus 2 and minus 1. Sum is minus 5. So minus of minus 5 is 5. A2 is a scalar, P2 is a matrix. So A2 is 5. Now next we have to find out P1. So after P2, so this is a set. So P2 and A2 we have found out. So next step we will use this information. In the next step we are trying to find out what is P1. P1 is basically P2A plus A2I. What is P2A? P2 is I only, so P2A is A, and A we will write down minus 2, 0, 1, 1 minus 2, 0, 1, 1 minus 1 plus 5 into I, so it will be basically, and this I is the same order as P1. Okay, so I said in a wrong way. So this I is of order 3. So this is I of order 3, 3 cross 3. Because these matrices should be third order, because the state matrix A is third order, its adjoint is also third order. So this will be 5, 5, 5. Other places we have 0. This becomes equals to what? 3, 0, 1, 1, 3, 0, 1, 1, 4. So we got our P1. We got our P1. So now we have to get our A1. A1 is what? A1 is minus trace minus half, because minus in what is I here? I is n minus 1. So n is 3, so I is 2 basically, and we are having minus 1 by n minus I. So we are dealing with I equals to 1, sorry, I equals to 1 here. So A1, so minus 1 by 3 minus 1, which is 2, trace of P1, sorry, P1 A. So we have to find out P1A actually first. So let us figure out what P1A is. So we have some space here, let us use that. I guess this will not suffice. So let us calculate P1A here. So P1A, what is P1? P1 is 3 0 1 1 3 0 1 1 4. What is A? minus 2 0 1 1 minus 2 0 1 1 minus 1. This will be equals to what? 3 into minus 2 minus 6 plus 1 minus 5. Next, here this element will be 1. I hope you know how to do matrix multiplication. So use your algorithm and you will find the next value would be 2. Here minus 2 plus 3, which is 1. Then you will get minus 6. Next one you will get 1. Next you will get minus 2 plus 1 plus 4. Minus 2 plus 1 is minus 1 plus 4 is 3. Next you will get minus 2 plus 4, which is 2. Next you will get 1 minus 4, which is minus 3. So what is its trace? Its trace is minus 5 minus 6 minus 3. So the trace is basically minus 5 minus 6 minus 3 is minus 14. So here we are having minus 14 by 2 and there is a minus sign also, so it becomes 7. So A1 becomes 7. So this is the next set. We can write it here. P1 equals to this 3 0 1 1 3 0 1 1 4 and A1 equals to 7. So this is another set of required coefficients that we have found out, P1 and A1. Next we need to find out what? We need to find out P0 and A0. So I don't need these calculations anymore. So I am just removing them. Let me keep this one for the time being. So let me go ahead and find out P0. P0 would be, as per the algorithm, P1A plus A1I. So what is P1A? P1 we know. P1 we have calculated 3 0 1. P1A also we calculated. We just removed it. So probably it is better that you refer to that. I will refer to my notes. P1A is basically, P1A is this. So you get them one by one actually. So P1A you have already calculated and then in the next step you have to use that. P1A is this. So this was P1A as we have calculated and A1 is 7, so this is 7 7 7 in the diagonals and all the other elements as 0. So what we get P0 as this 2 1 2 1 1 1 3 2 4. and then we have to calculate a0. A0 is minus 1 by 3. N is 3, I is 0 at this, in this particular iteration. Minus 1 by 3 trace of P0A. So P0A we have to calculate again. This one we don't have with us. P0, sorry, I think we lost it probably. Yeah. So I will just write down once in this side what we had obtained before. So we had obtained P2 equals to 111, A2 equals to 5. This is one set we had with us. Then next we had obtained P1 as this 301 130 114, and A1 as 7. And we had obtained P0, we had obtained already, we had obtained this P0 we had obtained as 2 1 2 1 1 1 3 2 4. A0 we are to obtain, so A0 is basically minus 1 by 3 trace of P0A. So here our screen went bad, so we are starting again from here. So P0A we need to obtain. What is P0A? P0 is 2 1 2 1 1 1 3 2 4. What is A? A is minus 2 0 1 1 minus 2 0 1 1 minus 1. If you look back in the video, you will see A in our problem was given like this. So this is A. So this thing is A. So now P0A we have to evaluate. So I guess already some of you have done this. So minus 4 plus 1 plus 2, that would be minus 1. So P0A we are evaluating. So next one, this entry would be minus 2 plus 2 0, then 2 minus 2 0 again. Next one, minus 2 plus 1 plus 1, again 0. This one is minus 2 plus 1 minus 1. I guess another one 0 is coming, so yeah, 0. Then this is going to be again 0, this is going to be 0, this is going to be minus 1. So it came out in a very simple manner. So P0A is this. So what is A0 is trace is minus 1 minus 1 minus 1 minus 3. So trace A0 becomes 1. So A0 is 1 here. So this is the other set we obtained. So our A is this. From A, knowledge of A only, we evaluated this P0, these different PIs and these AIs, and with that help we are able to figure out what SI minus A inverse is. So what is SI minus A inverse? SI minus A inverse is basically equals to Pn minus 1 Sn minus 1 plus Pn minus 2 Sn minus 2, like that. So here we started with P2 S square plus P1 S plus P0 divided by Sn plus A2. So n is 3 here, so we write 3 in this place. So 3, sorry again. So yeah, so we have all these things. So let me start writing from here. SI minus A inverse equals to P2 S2 plus P1 S plus P0 by S3 plus. So this problem is happening because of a setting in my pane which I am using. So from next time onwards I will be correcting that setting. So I've identified that problem, so I will correct it. So from next time I hopefully the entire numerical will come in the same screen. So bear with me this one time. So S cube plus A2 S square plus A1 S plus A0. Now we have already calculated what P2, P1, P0 are and A2, A1, A0 are. So look back in the video, pause the slide, pause there at that point where all the P2, P1, P0, A2, A1, A0 are already calculated, and then you simply plug those here into this. So what we have already calculated, so let me refer my notes and I will directly write them here. So we have calculated P2 as P2 is I, so it is simply S square S square S square, all others are 0, plus P1. What is P1? P1 is this 3 0 1 1 3 0 1 1 4, and we have to multiply it with S. So let us include the S inside. So this ones will become S. So let me remove the 1 and write S there. So I am careful to not disturb my pen so that we don't lose the slide once more. So S S S plus what is P0? P0 we have calculated to be 2 1 2 1 1 1 3 2 4 divided by S cube. What is A2? A2 is A2 we have found out to be 5 S square. A1 we have found out to be 7 S plus A0 we have found out to be 1. So this is how the numerator comes. So you see, you did not even have to do the determinant. So with the Leverage algorithm everything comes together. The determinant is this part is the determinant, and this part numerator is the adjoint. The adjoint we will write together as a matrix function. Let us write them together: a square plus 3s plus 2. Then we have 1. Then we have s plus 2. Next one, s plus 1, s square plus 3s plus 1, 1, s plus 3, s plus 3, s plus 2, and s square plus 4s plus 4. 4. Let me just check with my notes. Yeah, everything looks fine. So this divided by s cube plus 5s square plus 7s plus 1. So this is Si minus A inverse, but what we need to find out is the transfer function Gs. So this is all, the job is already done actually. So Gs is C Si minus A inverse B, and C, B and C, what are B and C? B and C were given to us. C was 2, 1, minus 1, and B 1, 0, 1. So you have to pre-multiply with C and post-multiply with B, and you can do it in whatever way you wish. You can do the post-multiplication first, the pre-multiplication later on. You can do it the pre-multiplication first, post-multiplication later on, however way you want. So I am taking the determinant part outside. S cube plus 5s square plus 7s plus 1. So this behaves as a scalar in this case. So taking that scalar out of the picture, then we have 2, 1, minus 1. This whole matrix Si minus this adjoint matrix is a square. Sorry, this is a square plus 3s plus 2, s plus 1, s plus 3, and here a 1, s plus 2, s square plus 3s plus 1, 1, s plus 2, s square plus 4s plus 4 into 1, 0, 1. So I will remove this part. And you can start figuring out what this would be. So I will first, for my case, I will first do the post multiplication and then the pre multiplication. You can also do the same way or the other way around, whatever suits you better. So gs will become equals to, so this part is already there, s cube plus 5s square plus 7s plus 1, 2, 1, minus 1, and now this will change. So this will be s square plus 3s plus 2 plus s plus 2. So s square plus 4s plus 4. Then s plus 1 plus 1, which is s plus 2. Next s plus 3 plus s square plus 4s plus 4. So s square plus 5s plus 7. So I guess I am correct here. Yeah, it is fine. So next, what this becomes, so now is the final step. So you have to simply multiply this with 2, add s plus 2 and subtract this term. So if you do that, what you will get is s square. As per my notes, it is s square plus 4s plus 3, but many times my notes are incorrect, as you have already experienced in the earlier course probably, and I sometimes do mistakes. So you have that extra responsibility to double check it and see whether this expression that I have written down is correct or not. However, the steps that have been followed are the ones which have been described in Lebre's algorithm. So if you follow them, if you have not done any silly mistake, you will get the correct answer. So this is the transfer function. So the transfer function is finally obtained from the state space representation. Okay. So now when you have obtained the state space, you have obtained the transfer function, you can also go ahead and find out the phase variable form, the rectangular form and the diagonal form that we have learned. So that is obviously one approach to convert one representation to another. However, there are other approaches which we will learn slowly and slowly as we go ahead. And today we will learn the relationship between different state space representations. So we will go ahead in the next slide. So this is something called the similarity transformation. Just let me take a pause. Yeah. So this is called the similarity transformation, and this is very important actually. So so what we are trying to discuss here. So we have already noticed that we can have several state space representations or of the same transfer function or the same system. So there must be a relationship between these state space representations. So that is what we are trying to talk about here. So we assume that these states, so in one representation, suppose the states are x, in another representation suppose they are written as z. So you can think like this. In the phase variable form, they are x1 x2 up to xn. If you write the rectangular form or the diagonal form for the same transfer function, you will not be able to use the same state variables for that form also, because you have already denoted x1 to xn to be the state variables of the phase variable form, and obviously the diagonal form is very different, the definition of the states are very different. So you have to assume some other state variable notation. So you can use perhaps z1 to zn in that case. So in this manner we are actually saying that we have a state space representation which is in x and another state space representation which is in z. So one is having the states defined as x, another having the states defined as z. So this is just to differentiate between the two state variable representations we are defining the states as x and another as z. This is mostly conventionally, these are the two variables which are used mostly. Now we suppose that x is related to z in this manner, which is x is equals to pz. So this is one convention that we are adopting for this particular course. Sometimes and in some reference materials you will find that z equals to px is mentioned. So it is almost the same. So when you understand all these things, you will understand it is all the same, only a few notational changes will happen. However, since this notational changes happen, so I prefer that we use this particular convention so that all our notations are similar and it is easier for me particularly to understand what you have done. So here what we are doing is basically we are assuming that x equals to pz, and it will also, keeping the same convention, will also not lead to any confusion for you also. So this implies that z equals to p inverse z, p inverse x, only when we have this p invertible. So only in that case we can write this. So this relationship will be a one-to-one relationship and invertible relationship only when the transformation p is non-singular. So we know this from matrix theory that we can invert p only when p is non-singular. So what does it mean? That means simply that the determinant must be non-zero. Okay, and to have the determinant non-zero, there are some conditions, which is that linear independence of the column vectors or the row vectors, which is same as the rank of p being full. So if p is n cross n matrix, which is in this case is n cross n matrix, so rank of p must also be n. So these two realizations are linked by such a non-singular similarity transformation. So whenever two state space realizations are related to each other, they have to be connected through a non-singular similarity transformation, so that we have a one-to-one and invertible relationship. One-to-one means, if you transform, so this is what, this is actually x1 is related to all the z's in some manner, x2 is related to all the z's in some manner. Similarly, z1 is related to all the x in some manner, z2 is related to all the x in some manner, and this relationship is unique. So there are no two z which is related in the same way. There are, so z1 ka what is the expression of z1 in terms of x, and the expression of any other z in terms of x will be always different from each other. So that is the one-to-one relationship, and that is also invertible. So when you do the reverse mapping, that is also a one-to-one mapping. So this is satisfied only when p is non-singular. So this thing you have to keep in mind. So what we are actually doing, we are seeing a relationship between the two state space x and z. So the state spaces are denoted by these capital letters. What is a state space? The state space is a space of all the vectors small x, and z is a space of all the vectors small z. So it is like this. So let me try to draw this. So suppose we have a two-dimensional system. So here we have x1, x2, and here we have Z1, Z2. So these are completely different state spaces. However, both are two-dimensional. Both are two-dimensional. And this P is a relationship. X equals to PZ, right? So this is P inverse and this is P. So what does it mean? You take any vector from this field, from this space x1 x2 space, you take any vector and you apply this P inverse matrix to that vector, you will get another vector which will be in this particular space, so which will be in the z1 z2 space. So it is like that. And similarly, you take any vector from this z, you apply a transformation of P, you will get a vector in X. Both are in the same state, both are in the vector space wise, both are the same in the same R2 space. However, they are defined by these axis vectors which are very different. One is defined in terms of x1 and x2, another is defined in terms of z1 and z2. So that is the difference, but both are in the R2 space only. So now what is the next thing to discuss? This P is called similarity transformation. So this is important, similarity transformation. So similarity transformation, this is called similarity transformation. Why the term similarity? Because it keeps the transfer function and hence the eigenvalues of the system invariant. So the transfer function remains invariant. So that we already have noted, because we have seen that we are deriving many different state space representations from the same transfer function. So if these representations are related by such non-singular transformation, which is basically called similarity transformation, then that similarity transformation must preserve the transfer function even though we are having two different state space realizations. And since the transfer function is preserved, the eigenvalues of the system are also preserved, and what is determining the characteristic behavior of the system is basically these eigenvalues, not the state space representation. State space representation is simply a representation. So we have discussed a lot in our earlier course on representations and the number systems, the representation of a quantity. So there are many representations, however the quantity remains the same. The value which is represented by those numbers, all those numbers in different number systems, that value, that quantity remains the same. So here also same thing happens. There are so many representations, there are so many state space representations, however the essence behind that representation, what it tries to represent, it tries to represent that transfer function, it tries to represent the characteristics of the system, that remains same even though the representation changes. And why we go from one representation to another representation? The answer is same. Why we go from decimal to binary or from octal to hexadecimal? Same answer. So in some situations, some representation suits us better. We are able to work with some representation in a certain environment in an easier manner than the other. So that's why these similarity transformations are there and there are so many state space realizations or state space representations. So the state space representation in X and Z, how it is related. So what we mean to say is, if in X we are having A, B, C, D matrices defining the representation, in the Z space we are having suppose AZ, BZ, CZ matrices to represent to define that representation, then how A and AZ are related, B and BZ are related, C and CZ are related. That is an important concept, and the formulas can be derived very easily, and one has to remember these formulas also. So these are very basic in state space realizations. So going ahead, as you will be able to see, so here you see the state space realization in X is this, so which is the standard one. So if we assume that the state space realization in X is x dot equals to ax plus bu, y equals to cx plus du, then what becomes z dot? You see, note from here, z dot is p inverse x dot. P inverse, what is x dot? X dot is ax plus bu. So p inverse ax plus p inverse bu. So what is x? Now we will replace, x is pz, so it becomes p inverse a pz plus p inverse bu. Okay, so now it takes the form of z dot equals to azz plus bzu, where az is p inverse ap, bz is p inverse b. So this is generic. You see, this formula is generic. So always if you have a conversion, or if you have a transformation from one state space X to another state space Z, and you already know what is the representation in X, so the convention is like this. So you already know the representation in X, and you are trying to know the representation in Z, and you have the transformation such that X and Z are related in this manner. LHS is what we know, RHS is what we want to know, and what we know is equals to P of what we want to know. So in this manner the convention goes. So if you follow this convention, then what we want to know, the A matrix of that, which is AZ, will be always P inverse AP, will be always P inverse AP. Bz is P inverse B, Bz is P inverse B. Y is Cx plus du, x is simply written as Pz, and du does not change because there is no transformation on u. So it becomes Czz plus du, where Cz is basically Cp, d remains unaffected. So this is the relationship. Please remember that this relationship holds true only when you relate the two spaces in this manner, where x is what you know and z is where you want to go. So x is where you already are, z is where you want to go. So you know the ABCD matrices in X space, you want to find out the ABCD matrices in Z space, and you relate X equals to PZ in this manner. Then only this is the relationship, P inverse AP, P inverse B, CP. Otherwise the relationship is a bit different. I will not tell the relationship explicitly here just to avoid confusion, but if anyone is interested they can look for it, and there are some reference books and enough reference materials in the internet also, which go through that convention, which is z equals to px. So if you go through that convention, z equals to px, you will land up on different formula. You may try it, those who are interested, but if you are not so comfortable yet with this subject, don't go ahead and try it. learn the way I am trying to make you learn, and once you become more comfortable, more confident, then you can of course try different things. Note that A, B, C could be time varying matrices, because you see we did not consider any property of A, B, C being time invariant. Well, I guess this is not so true, because if you had to do X dot, then this if A is time variant, then there would be some problem here. So ignore this remark for the time being. I did not notice it so well, so I wrote it down by mistake. So there is a problem if there is time varying matrices, then this relationship does not hold in this particular manner. So this remark is not justified actually, so ignore this remark. Next, what we see, we will try to prove that when we go through the similarity transformation, the transfer function remains invariant, and that actually tells us that the eigenvalues will also remain invariant, because the eigenvalues are nothing but the roots of the characteristic polynomial of the transfer function. So when the transfer function remains invariant, the characteristic polynomial also remains invariant. The poles of the characteristic polynomial, the roots of the characteristic polynomial also remains invariant. So how we are going to prove that? We are going to compute the transfer function in the x state space as well as in the z state space. In the x state space, we already know that this is the expression, we have already derived it. From the z state space, let us see. So from the z state space, gzs will be cz si minus az inverse bz plus d, since cz, az and bz are the abc matrices in the z state space. We simply replace cz as cp, az as p inverse ap, bz as p inverse b. Now we use some relationship well known in the matrix computations, which is m inverse n inverse is equals to n m inverse. So if n and m are matrices, then m inverse n inverse equals to n m inverse. So you see here that what we do, we first include this p inverse inside. So when we try to include this p inverse inside, it comes from the, so we try this p inverse is in the posterior, so when we try to include this from inside, p comes from the starting from the left hand side. So it becomes SPI minus a minus p inverse ap. So p inverse becomes I, so SPI minus ap inverse. Now this p is in the left hand side, we try to include it within the bracket, so it comes as p inverse from the right hand side. And when it comes as p inverse from the right hand side, this p inverse cancels out, only a remains, and here is also a p and a p inverse from the right hand side, that cancels out and only I remains. So this again looks the same as GS, you can see. So we have proved that GZS is equals to GS. So these proofs are very common proofs which you may be asked in your exam. So please go through this diligently, and these are very easy also to remember how to prove this, and also not much trick is also involved. So you must be able to quickly do the proof whenever you are asked to do. So what is the conclusion from this? The transfer function and the characteristic polynomial eigenvalues remain unaffected. So that is the conclusion. What we are gaining with the similarity transformation, we are gaining flexibility in state space representation of a dynamical system. So you are gaining a hand in the representation. So as in the number system case in the earlier course, we had so many number systems representing the same value or quantity. Similarly, here we are having so many state space representations representing the same dynamical system, and the behavior etc which are inherent to the dynamical system, those are retained by all these representations. Only what we have a flexibility in representation, and because of that we are so one form suits one specific type of design, so we can use one particular form and go ahead with the design. uh, 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 though we may have started with another form which is complex for design purposes, we can easily simplify it through a similarity transformation, through a suitable similarity transformation, and then go ahead with the design. So this thing is not possible with only transfer function, as you know, because transfer function is a fixed representation, so we don't have any flexibility there. Analysis could be done, so design and analysis, everything could be done in one particular SPR which is suitable and easier to do the math. So and finally we take it back to the original SPR. So since we have transformed it to a suitable SPR using a similarity transformation P, we can always go back by doing a P inverse. So that is always with us in our hand. So we do the easy math in the Z space, suppose, and when we have done all the analysis and the design, we come back to the X space simply by doing a P inverse on whatever result we have obtained. It is not simply a P inverse, it can be something different, but if we have, suppose we have found the solution, so we have found ZT, so XT we can find by simply doing a P inverse, because X and Z are related in that manner. Normally as we have already found that diagonal form is very suitable. So what is Jordan? We will learn shortly what is Jordan. Jordan is the basically the generalization of the diagonal form when we have repetitive eigenvalues. So diagonal or the Jordan SPRs are particularly suitable for computation of solutions and analysis of the system. So we will use these SPRs in the diagonal Jordan forms, and we will find out the similarity transformations which take us from any representation to the diagonal or the Jordan representation. That can always be done, and that we will do, and we will find that our life become very simple when we go to the diagonal of the Jordan form, and we can walk there and then again come back to the original form. So that is one very prominent use of the similarity transformation that we are going to do in the purview of the control systems course. This is a basically a general matrix property, so wherever in whichever subject topic matrices are used, and matrices are used almost everywhere in advanced and modern scientific disciplines. So everywhere the similarity transformation is a very important concept, so they use it in their own field. Yeah, they transfer it to a suitable representation, may not always be Jordan or diagonal. They transform it to a suitable representation which suits them, and they do the math there and then go back to their original representation. That's the same thing we are going to do in our case also. So with that we end the lecture, and thanks for your attention, and hopefully you understood this very important concept of similarity transformation. Concept wise it is very important. It is one of the foundations of state space representations, this idea of similarity transformation. You will see similarity transformations everywhere. If you just like for our research purpose it is everywhere, and I am sure for even design purposes, for industrial purposes, if you design using the modern control methods of state space representations, similarity transformation is something that you will always need. So the idea behind it is important, as well as the mathematics. We have not explored the mathematics in that great detail yet, but we'll do it. So that is also important. And another thing that we learned is how to get a transfer function given a state space representation, and there we understood, we also saw a very important algorithm, a very useful algorithm, which is the Leverage algorithm, which is used to directly compute the Si minus A inverse. So you can always keep that in the back of your mind, that Si minus A inverse can be computed very easily if I have the A matrix using the Leverage algorithm. Yeah, it involves certain steps, but the steps are very standard, and you see, you simply have to do matrix multiplications, which are lot more easier than finding out the adjoint directly. So that is something as a takeaway that we can have from this lecture. So thank you, thanks again, and see you in the next lecture.